When I was a little kid, I very much wanted to know how things worked. It's like if I had a toy or some electronic thing, and my folks are back there somewhere nodding along, I think. They remember the days where I've always wanted to take things apart and figure out how they worked. Now, putting them back together, that was a whole different story. That didn't go so well. But I had a strong curiosity of how stuff worked. I also remember having a strong desire for things to be authentic. So, for instance, if I wanted a football, it wasn't just any football, but I wanted the authentic one that they used in NFL games. Wanted the real thing. And I think of that as we come into this second week of Lent and the second threshold of intentional discipleship, which is curiosity. Because that's what curiosity does, right? It drives us to know more, to know what's true, how things work, what's authentic. The more curious we are, the more dedicated, the more effort we're going to put in to figure it out, to come to that truth, to that knowledge. I think of those of you who are lifelong learners, who just can't get enough of school, can't get enough knowledge, just want to go deeper and know more. There is an inner motivation that runs deep. And so this threshold then of curiosity is defined as a person finds him or herself intrigued by or desiring to know more about Jesus, his life, his teachings, or some aspect of the Christian faith. A person at this threshold is not yet open to personal change, but is heading in that direction. Person finds themselves intrigued or desiring to know more about Jesus. Now again, we often will think of the person who's fallen away from the church or the convert who needs to find Jesus. Us as weekly mass goers, we might not always put ourselves in this category, but I again urge you to have an open mind and to see this as true and possible for anyone, regardless of where they are on their faith journey. So last week, we talked about that initial bridge of trust, that somehow we've come in contact with someone or something related to the church that was good, that allowed us to have an initial trust. And once that happens, now our curiosity kicks in. We become curious, what does this whole discipleship thing really mean? How does this work? Is it true? Does accepting it really bring me to where my heart is going to be fulfilled and happy? Apply this concept of curiosity, for you who are lifelong learners, or for me as a little kid wanting to know how toys worked. Apply that to the spiritual life and become obsessed with how discipleship works, with who Jesus is, what he's all about. Become obsessed with understanding and experiencing the authenticity of the church and her sacraments and the life that comes from them. The world has a lot of definitions for happiness and a lot of false definitions for happiness. The world will lead us in all sorts of directions for fulfillment that ultimately are going to leave us emptier than when we started. Discipleship, a life of intimate relationship with the Lord, is where true fulfillment and joy is found. Does that mean we're going to be happy every day? No. Does it mean it's always going to feel good? No. The cross didn't feel good and wasn't necessarily happy, but it's the cross that brought about resurrection. And when we think about being joyful and fulfilled, when we think about how we can be bridges of trust and engage our curiosity, isn't it true that people are most attracted to those who are joyful? The people who encounter a Christian and say, there's just something about them. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something about them that I want. That's the joy and fulfillment that comes from us. And again, whether convert, cradle Catholic, or anywhere in between, that is what's most desirable. So we might not be ready to take the deep dive, but when curiosity is strong, we start moving in that direction, in a direction of openness to what an intimate relationship with the Lord looks like. So we come to the gospel and we find Jesus transfigured on the mountain. He takes Peter, James, and John. Now, do you think the experience for those three on the mountain might have sparked a little bit of curiosity in their hearts, wondering, what is this all about? Even for the rest that didn't get to go up on the mountain, at this point, the 12 have trusted Jesus to an extent because they're following him. They're learning more about him, but they're far from understanding who exactly he is. There's a curiosity in their heart. And even in this instance, for the three who were there, to have a greater sense of who he truly is, seeing his glory, that still must have sparked some curiosity. But just think in a broader context too in the gospel, how often clarifying questions are asked. You know, the disciples, after Jesus teaches a parable, are trying to figure out, they're curious what he means, or questioning why he does or doesn't do something. Think of the questions we hear about, who is this man? Isn't this man the carpenter's son? Isn't he the son of Mary and Joseph? Where does his authority come from? All throughout Jesus' ministry, the people who encountered him had this spark of curiosity and then had a choice. Could either act on it and learn more about who Jesus is and follow him in a more intense way, or they could walk away, like many did when Jesus gave the bread of life discourse. And so that choice is for us now too. As our curiosity is piqued, how do we respond? Jesus, transfigured, is revealing not only his glory, but the glory that awaits all of us. It's a glimpse of where we are to go. His divine nature is manifested in the transfiguration. And as St. Thomas Aquinas pointed out, the purpose of the transfiguration was to give the disciples, even in the midst of all the difficulties of this life, it was to give them a sense of courage, knowing what awaited them. This is the glory, the transfigured Lord, that through our salvation, we too can enjoy one day. The transfigured Lord, in all his glory, that's what we're curious about. We want to know what discipleship's all about, faith, life of the church, who Jesus is. That's the answer to the curiosity. That's what we are meant to be. And the more we subordinate our will to God, the more we allow our wants and desires to be purified, letting go of what's unnecessary in this life, we begin to share in the glory that is to come. So, what I urge us, you and me both, let's embrace our curiosity. Imagine standing with Peter, James, and John on top of that mountain, standing face to face with the transfigured Lord. Imagine wanting to know more, wanting to love more, to be more open to what Jesus wishes to give. Jesus shows the glory that awaits all of us. But the pathway to get there is not found by being lukewarm or preoccupied with the trappings of this world. The pathway to transfigured glory is intentional discipleship, being in an intimate relationship with the Lord.